So a lot of people believe that avoidance can heal. They can actually participate in an intimate relationship like a secure person can. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but abandonment is the love language of avoidance.
Yeah. Actual avoidance.
Yeah, and we'll tell you exactly why in this video. By the way, my name is David and...
I'm Renee. And for the last 16 years, we have been coaching women in dating, relationships, and healing insecure attachment.
When we talk about avoidance, we've got to make the distinction here. We're not talking about fearful avoidance. Fearful avoidance is something that is a term that was coined by Kim Bartholomew back in the 90s. 1990, she did her PhD and she wrote this thesis, and she tried to divide avoidant behavior into different categories.
Yeah.
Specifically, fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant. But I think it's a little bit of a misnomer, because the fearful avoidant here, their behavior may look avoidant, but they're based in anxiousness.
Yeah, their nervous system errs towards anxiousness.
Yes, correct. So when we talk about avoidant in our videos, etc., when we talk about true avoidance, we're not talking about these fearful avoidance. We're talking more about the people at the end of the scale, the end of the spectrum, who are, as John Bowlby, the original father of attachment styles, he would coin them hard-boiled or emotionally stunted or blunted.
Emotional blunting. Yeah.
Blunting. That's the word, the phrase that he would use. So in fact, let's start this by giving you a quote that Bowlby wrote himself when he was studying the 44 juvenile thieves, one of the earliest studies that he put together younger in his career.
So he was working at the Child Guidance Center, and he was working with a bunch of juvenile thieves, studying them and studying their history, their family history, understanding the context in which they came to be who they were, because the characteristics of these thieves were obviously quite, not even just maladaptive, but that could err on the side of psychopathic. And so Bowlby was very interested in psychopathology in humans, and so these 44 juvenile thieves are a good gauge for the true avoidant, at least in terms of juveniles and how their behavior may manifest.
And a lot of these juvenile thieves had this emotional blunting where they reacted to neither praise nor criticism, and back in the day he would describe them as somewhat avoidantly attached, even though he didn't have those words at that time in his career. So here's the quote. In some of these youths, he saw a profound and unreachable depression, as if when they had lost their loving universe, a switch turned off in them that could not be turned back on. Okay, and I think that's quite significant, because he studied these individuals, these young, how old were they, 14 to 18-ish year olds?
Oh, really young, yeah.
And nothing in their lives could replace that thing that was missing. Not a loving family even.
Yeah.
Some of these kids were from loving families, but they were separated from their parents or from their family at a young age. And it was this was due to the diphtheria outbreak back in Britain at the time. And the protocol was to take your baby, put them in a isolated room for 9 months.
In hospital.
Yeah. That was the treatment.
With no visitation.
Yeah.
No visitation from anyone, not even your mother.
And as a result from that, even if they're coming from a loving family, they ended up having this sense of massive loss that could not be replaced.
Yeah.
That is significant.
Along the way, these juvenile thieves that John Bowlby studied, he studied how maternal deprivation, in his days it was mainly paternal deprivation because of how the family was set up back then and how parenting dynamics were back then. But in this day and age, we can replace that with maternal and paternal deprivation. How that affects a child's psyche, a baby's attachment system. Essentially, what this really shows us is that once the attachment system has been ignored long enough, once a baby has been emotionally abandoned and deprived, you can't replace that attachment system. It's like the damage is done. Now, of course, it depends on who you ask. Some psychologists or psychotherapists are highly against deterministic attitudes towards patients like this, and they'll say, they can be worked with. We're not necessarily here to comment on that today, but we are here to tell you that these types of avoidance, the purely avoidant individual is highly likely to repeatedly abandon you, if not physically, then emotionally, because they don't have the depth of feeling and attachment and bonding that pulls them back to that sense of loyalty and security, okay? Because they've never experienced that security through bonding and through the human attachment system. Their sense of security comes from the opposite of what securely attached people feel. For securely attached people, they have a secure base within them, and that's an inner resource through which they draw from, right? And that grows more secure over time. As the secure person goes through adversity and comes out of it stronger. However, the avoidant just has basically developed a replacement for secure attachment, which is the compulsive self-reliance. And this compulsive self-reliance may not sound pathological, it may not sound that scary or bad, but it actually is in practice. It's actually quite a scary kind of state to be in, because then you know that person, that avoidant, relies on no one. Technically they say they rely on themselves, but what that really is, it's like a knocking on emptiness. It's constantly knocking on their own door of emptiness where no one really responds. It's a defensive mechanism against a loss of nurturing.
And that's their center of gravity.
Yeah.
That's what they revolve around. Think about the amount of how much a baby would feel abandoned by being placed in an isolated room for 9 months. I mean, that's devastating, but that becomes their universe. And now abandonment is all they know.
Yeah.
That is normalcy to them.
Yeah.
A sense of toxic normalcy. But it is normal for them.
Yeah.
So whenever you interact with these individuals, that's what's normal for them. So that is what they expect you to go through as well if you were to interact with them.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're a secure individual, you'd assume that, okay, the closer we get to someone, the more intimate we become.
Yeah.
From in an emotional sense. But that's not the case with someone who's avoidant. And the more avoidant they're in that, they go down that spectrum, the more they're going to exhibit these behaviors.
Yeah. And these patterns, just by adulthood, they become very entrenched. Right? And they just become more entrenched as someone gets older. And in case you're wondering, well, we don't put babies through this protocol for diphtheria now. The fact is that super ignorant parents can still create an avoidant in this day and age, even if they're not ignorant. Sometimes the unfortunate thing happens. A baby is born to a mother who's severely ill. And then that baby is then passed around to different carers, whether it be foster carers, extended family, or blood family to some extent. They never get that one single person or couple of parents to deeply bond to and attach to, and their attachment system doesn't develop the same. With parents crying their babies out overnight and during the day, or for every sleep, every nap, that can create a severe avoidant. And so we have our modern day version of this. Absolutely, especially the passing around. I know in families that are broken or not, don't have many resources, just a series of unfortunate events has been bestowed upon them, and they just don't have the resources to take care of the baby. Even though someone is feeding the baby and there to so-called nurture, the baby doesn't have the resources to form that secure bond because that baby's getting passed around. Yeah. So for these really insecure, really avoidant people, intimacy is not even a thing. Yeah. Whereas if you're fearful avoidant, intimacy is kind of scary, but you still want it, you still desire it, your soul wants that because you know that attachment is a source of value, a source of resource, something that we as humans, we all crave and want. Yeah. So that's fearful avoidant. Yeah. Because you still are rooted in anxiousness. Yeah. Whereas if you go further down that spectrum, you go into avoidant, like true avoidant, intimacy is not a thing. It's not real. It doesn't exist. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? Like, they wouldn't even understand the concept because they don't feel it. It's right. Like, explaining what it feels like to an alien who's never felt water. Yeah, or speaking Russian to someone who spent their entire lives speaking English. Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's foreign, and they wouldn't know what to make of it. Yeah, exactly. So this is why we say abandonment is the love language of avoidance. That's what they know. That, and it may not even be like they're trying to actively cause you to feel abandonment. That's just where they live. Yeah. So everything they do, there's a sense, there's that touch, that it probably feels like they dehumanize you and they don't value the relationship, because that's what those actions actually manifest as, a sense of dehumanization, not just of you but of themselves as well. But it's normal to them. Yeah. Even if they have good masking strategies, sometimes that makes you feel kind of bonded to them or connected to them, but it's only just a surface strategy, and deep down inside, like, oh, suddenly it's gone. Like, where'd it go? Yeah. Right? So because avoidants are very clever at trying to disguise themselves. They know how broken they are deep down inside. Yeah. So they put up these walls and masks to fool you. Sometimes they might even gaslight you to make you think that something's wrong with you. Yeah, that you're anxious or something. Yeah, so like, they may have very different boundaries or standards for relationships to normal people. For a normal person, okay, you communicate and you keep that ongoing. For an avoidant, that may not be a thing. Yeah, exactly. And it may make you think you're anxious. Yeah. Overly anxious. Yeah, that's right. So I guess in a way we could also say that those people who are fearful avoidant or anxious avoidant, who for a series of reasons, whatever reasons, they head more down down that spectrum towards avoidant, they can maybe even abandon you in certain ways as well, because the more you get towards avoidant, the more you just abandon connection and bonding altogether. So this is why it's so important to heal if you have any avoidant tendencies, even though you may be largely anxious. A lot of anxious people do end up having some avoidant tendencies if they're in the right type of toxic relationship. Being raised in a toxic way, a lot of these anxious people will end up having some avoidant tendencies. That's what disorganized attachment is, right? Toxic abuse that's led your nervous system to learn that, okay, I shouldn't rely on people.
Yeah, it can go either way. When you're in that anxious zone, it's kind of in the middle of the spectrum. You can go either way.
Yeah.
You can either heal, not easy, but it's possible. And you can go more avoidant because you go, you know what? The world is dangerous. I'm going to protect myself.
Yeah.
I don't like anxiousness.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there. It's wasting my energy. I'm going to just keep myself in my bubble. That's it.
Yeah.
So it can go either way.
Yeah.
The more you go towards the avoidant, the more abandonment becomes a thing. It's just how you live.
Yeah. And this is not us saying that you're a bad person. It's just the truth. It's a manifestation. It's what happens when the attachment system isn't used. When the attachment system when that switch hasn't been turned on and nurtured from there. Think of avoidance as like a bean shoot that's trying to grow in the dark, right? As a baby. The bean shoot's trying to grow in the dark, and when it tries to grow, it
grows high. It grows really
high,
tall.
Really tall to try and reach the sun. But the sun, of course, it never comes because it's in a dark room. And so eventually it goes pale. And after it goes pale, it ends up dying. And so the avoidant as a baby did seek out that nurturing. Of course it did.
Every baby does.
We all do.
Yeah.
I every now and then I hear this mother walking down past my house. You guys are usually sleeping. It's early in the morning. She walks down with a pram with a couple of children in it, one toddler, maybe one baby. And this baby is always screaming for its life. It's screeching. Okay, screeching is an understatement. It is screaming for its life. And I can hear it. It's getting to that point. It's already at that point of being angry. If you've ever heard a newborn cry, and you don't go to them, they get to that point where they get angry. Like you can hear it, and they're angry. They really need you to come. They don't understand what's going on. So every baby does that. And if that poor baby is left in that state and nobody ever comes, that attachment system dies off. That switch turns off. And a lot of people will say, well, it's still there, oxytocin bonding and all that. The bonding mechanisms are still there. Well, it's not the same. It's not in the same working order as a securely attached person. Again, we're not saying you're a bad person, but we want you as an anxious, fearful of one, or even a secure person watching to understand that the message we're imparting upon you is that you shouldn't expect your nervous system to be the same as the avoidance. It's really a silly thing to do.
It's
to
trauma.
go into a relationship with an avoidant, a pure avoidant, thinking that, oh, I can fix them and they'll become like me. Well, no, in the process of trying to fix them, not only will you lose your secure base to some extent, as in you're not going to become insecure necessarily as a secure person, but you'll have to lower your esteem to match theirs. You'll have to lower your expectations for bonding to match theirs. And if you do this long enough, you're going to feel the effects of it. And we don't want the secure people of the world to experience that. We've got 3 young children. We've raised them to be secure. My God, the work and the sacrifice, every part of everything you ever thought you could possibly sacrifice and more was put into these kids to make them secure. We don't want the secure people of the world to lose that, So we want you to understand. It's your choice whether to deal with them or not, but at least have the right expectations. Don't think you're going to make their nervous system like yours. Don't think you're going to make them love bonding like you do.
Yeah, so I think there's some hope with fearful avoidance, but anything beyond fearful avoidance is, I think, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any hope for those people.
Yeah.
I think the damage done, the trauma done, is permanent. And not only that, but also they have no reason at all at that extreme end to want to bond.
To
They're
value
done.
the relationship.
They're done. They're finished. It's that compulsive self-reliance that you talked about. There's no way that they're going to let someone else in after that much trauma. Whilst I think there is hope for a lot of fearful avoidance because they're rooted in anxiousness to heal, anything beyond that, I don't think so.
If you want to find out where you sit on the attachment spectrum and get a score for how secure you are, you can go and take our free attachment quiz. It's women specific at this point. Go to reneeslinks.com. You'll find the quiz there. It only takes 3 minutes and you can discover not only your attachment style, your core attachment style, but get a score, get an idea of where you sit on the spectrum and what you may need to do to heal. Make sure you read the explanation afterwards and the free email newsletters that we'll send you on the daily, because that will also help you heal, or even if you're not looking to heal, help you understand the person that you are dating or in a relationship with.
Oh, and one last thing. We're putting together a brand new book titled Healing Insecure Attachment. That's right. Well, it's not available right now. It will be sometime soon, hopefully early next year. But if you want a copy of this when it is released, leave a comment below or follow along, subscribe, whatever it is, and leave a comment below and tell us exactly your story with attachment styles, whether it's your own or someone that you're familiar with. And let's keep this conversation going, because at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially about avoidance. And remember, abandonment is the love language of avoidance. Keep that in your head when you deal with avoidance.
Yes.
All right, that's all.
Bye.
Bye.